The Muggle Death Eater and His Daughter by Great 78. Chapter 46. Dumbledores and Diadems. Harry had realized almost instantly that Tonks and her group must have been successful in their endeavor to locate a Horcrux. It was made clear to him by the vision he'd had, directly from the mind of Voldemort. In the vision, Voldemort was punishing the goblin who had delivered the message about the robbery at Gringotts, the wizards who had been guarding the bank, and Rodolphus for allowing his vault to be infiltrated. It was clear that a couple was missing, and Voldemort's ire was truly terrifying to behold. When the punishment was over, Voldemort had run through his inner list of Horcruxes, wondering about the safety of each. He had rushed into a study or office of some sort, casting a summoning spell for a diary that was no longer there. Apparently, Voldemort had not realized that Lucius had gotten rid of it years before. Harry listened in to the Dark Wizard's thoughts as he considered locating Lucius for punishment, then decided that there would be time for that later, after the other Horcruxes were accounted for. Where to go first? Dumbledore could have learned of his family lineage from the orphanage. Perhaps he should start with the Gaunt Shack. The cave certainly was secure. He had erected many protections for it, and he was satisfied that the one at Hogwarts could never be found. Nagini was in Malfoy Manor with him, resting in their quarters, but to be careful he must keep her with him, protected at all times. He summoned the large snake, securing her in a magical cage of light. Then he spoke to his followers, many of whom seemed more than slightly manic. Finally, holding Nagini's cage tightly, he disapparated to Little Hangleton. Harry woke up on the floor of the kitchen in the Black House. He was surrounded by the concerned faces of Ron, Dumbledore, and Sirius, the tea that the four of them had been enjoying forgotten on the table. Harry looked about in momentary disorientation. Dumbledore spoke. "Harry, what did you see?" "He knows that we know about the items. The last one is at Hogwarts," Harry said in a rush of disbelief. "He's going to check on all of them. The one at the school, last, most likely. I didn't see what was at Hogwarts, but the one that Tonks found was the Cup of Hufflepuff, so the one at Hogwarts is likely related to Ravenclaw." Sirius looked confused by the details of the discussion, but did not interrupt. Harry stood up from the floor. "He just learned that the diary's gone. I think he's going to the Gaunt Shack next, then the cave. The last one is somewhere inside Hogwarts. We need to go and find it before he can," he said, dusting off his hands on his trousers. "Professor Dumbledore, are you coming?" Albus Dumbledore looked hesitant. "Harry, almost everyone outside of a handful of the innermost order believe me to be dead. I'm afraid that if I go there today, I will be a distraction for our people. Besides, this is your fight now. As I told you nearly a year ago, you have the tools you need, your knowledge, the sword, and the ring. Harry, there's something you should know about the ring. There will come a time when you will need help, strength. When that time comes, hold the ring and turn it in hand 3 times. I've told you that help will always be given at Hogwarts to those who ask for it. With this ring, you do not even need to ask. Help is waiting. That being said, while I will be with you in spirit, it is ultimately up to you to defeat him." Harry grasped the hands of his professor. "I won't let you down." "Harry," Professor Dumbledore admonished kindly, "you could never let me down." "Well, I'm going with you," said Sirius. "There's someone there I've grown to care about. and I'm going to do what I can to keep them safe. I feel they would do the same for me." After a few hurried preparations and some helpful suggestions of where to go from Tonks via mobile, the three of them flew directly into the Hogshead Inn. Aberforth was wiping glasses with a dirty cloth behind the bar. "What are you three doing here?" "We're preparing to fight against you-know-who. Don't be surprised if more people come through here soon, Aberforth," Sirius said. Behind him, the two young Gryffindors looked at each other in surprise. Looking at the man named Aberforth, there could be no doubt whose pub they'd just entered. Then Sirius turned to Harry and Ron. "I'm going to stay here, in the village. Richard and Narcissa will be out here, and they might need help, and—" "Your person on the other side?" Harry asked knowingly. Sirius smiled. "Yes." "Go. Good luck. Be safe." Sirius hugged his godson. "You as well." With that, Sirius transformed into the huge black dog of his animagus form, and trotted out the front door of the pub, into the gathering darkness of dusk. Harry and Ron turned back to Aberforth, who had watched the entire exchange with an annoyed expression. "My brother was too cowardly to come," Aberforth sneered. Harry approached the older man who looked so much like his brother. "Aberforth, I've lived with Professor Dumbledore this past year, and we've talked about your family, you know, after Rita Skeeter's book was published. I read it, and he and I discussed it at length this year." "So you know how much of a coward he is, in his heart," Aberforth bit out. "Sending a child to do a man's job." "He knows that this is my fight, and he didn't want to be a distraction tonight." "Funny, he didn't mind it so much years ago when it came to our sister," Aberforth said bitterly. "I've tried to let bygones be bygones over the years, but that Skeeter book dredged up a lot of bad memories for me. I suppose none of that bothers him, though. Ariana was just another child whose life didn't matter to him. She was just another stumbling block to his rise to greatness, after all." "It mattered very much," Harry said quietly. "The night that he supposedly died, he and I went to a cave. He drank a horrible potion that made him relive his worst memory there. He told me later that it was the memory of you and Ariana being tortured by Grindelwald." Aberforth diligently wiped the dirty glass with a dirty cloth, not looking up to meet Harry's eyes. "You should talk to him about it," Harry finished. Aberforth grunted, then gestured up the stairs that ran along the back wall of the pub. "Up there! The big room, on the left. Tell the painting that you need to get into the school." "Thank you," Harry said, and the two of them hurried up the stairs. After a few moments, Aberforth gave up on the dirty glass, and withdrew his wand from his pocket. Waving it in front of him, he conjured a brightly glowing goat Patronus. The boy was right. A conversation was needed between himself and his brother, but for now, a summons would have to suffice. He whispered his message to the goat, then watched as it cantered headlong through the nearest wall and out of sight. "So you got no idea where the lost diadem of Ravenclaw could be?" Ron asked the assembled band of Ravenclaws again. Just as before, they all shook their heads no. He tried again. "There's no secret hideaway in Ravenclaw Tower. Everyone's checked all the possible hiding places in the common room." "It can't hurt to look again," Harry said. "Luna, you said there's a depiction of the diadem on Rowena Ravenclaw's statue. Can you show it to me? Maybe we can check a few other places on the way. The trophy room, or the library."
"I can get you into Ravenclaw Tower. Let's bring Ginny with us. I know she missed you, Harry, and she can help us with the Carrows if we encounter them,"
Luna said, jumping up to take her ginger-haired friend by the hand. The three of them set off for Ravenclaw Tower under Harry's cloak, Harry carrying the sword of Gryffindor.
"We can't just sit here doing nothing," Hermione said under her breath to Draco. "Godric knows we spent enough time in this room last year. I can't just sit around in here again. Is there anywhere else we can think to check?"
Draco sat fidgeting for a moment. Then he suddenly grew still. "Hermione, you're right. We did spend a lot of time in here last year. Do you recall it well?"
She gave him an odd look and blushed. "Of course I do, but I hardly think that now is the time to be thinking about—"
"No, witch, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about all of the things in the room with us. You remember, there were piles of things that people had vanished or lost or forgotten about, or maybe things that people hid away from others."
Hermione's eyes lit up. "Draco, my God, you're a genius. We've got to get everyone out of here. Transform the room back to the room of hidden things."
"Can you send a message to Potter? Tell him to meet us back here with the sword?" Draco asked eagerly. She took out her mobile and tapped out a message, but grew frustrated after a moment.
"It says it wasn't received by him. Now that I think of it, I had to do a modified bubblehead charm to make my mobile work here inside Hogwarts, and he didn't do that. His won't work."
"Patronus!"
"Too dangerous. He's trying to be stealthy. It wouldn't do for a little silver otter to run up to him with a message."
"Right. Shit. So even if we find it, we have to wait around here for him to get back with that blasted sword."
"No!" Hermione breathed. "I know what we need."
And with that, she rushed over to Ron, who was talking with Pansy and Neville. It took only a few minutes to clear the room of requirement. Dumbledore's army began to disperse around the castle in order to find strategic hiding and fighting places. Ron, Neville, and Pansy set off for the Chamber of Secrets. After witnessing Harry open the chamber several years ago, and the locket only a few months back, Ron felt confident that he could replicate the parcel-tongue needed to open the chamber. As Pansy and Neville knew the patrol schedule for the Enforcement Brigade, they were eager to help. Draco walked hand in hand with Hermione in front of the troll tapestry 3 times, concentrating hard on what they needed. The door to the room appeared, and they rushed to it. The inside was just as they remembered. Towering piles of broken and burned furniture, hopelessly outdated clothing, snapped quills and crumpled up parchment stood as far as the eye looked. Shattered broomsticks, broken trophies, bits and bobs were flung everywhere.
"I recall seeing a treasure chest of sorts. It was piled high with all manner of jewelry, it seemed. Perhaps we start there?"
Hermione suggested, although determining where that was proved to be difficult. After a few wrong turns, they located the chest. They dug through quickly, then slowly once more, but nothing sapphire, nothing that looked remotely like a diadem, was there.
"Should we split up?" she asked, a note of desperation creeping into her voice.
"No, this place is too big. We could lose each other easily in here. We stay together," Draco answered with as much confidence as he could muster. 30 minutes and 4 false alarms later, a glint of blue caught Hermione's eye. She dragged him to it, and they picked their way to the top of an old wardrobe. He plucked the crown from its high shelf, not wanting to breathe for fear of disturbing the tottering pile underneath it. "Do you think this is it?" he asked quietly.
"I don't know,"
Hermione said, almost reverently.
"Let me see it."
He held it out to her, holding it uncertainly between his thumbs and forefingers to her. She leaned in closer to look.
"Yes," she gasped. "Yes, I think this is it. Look at the engraving under the stone. Wit beyond measure is man's greatest treasure. It's the diadem."
She took the crown gently in her hands and held it carefully, almost lovingly, against her. "I want to smash it," Draco said, jaw clenched, clearly on edge, looking at the thing.
"It won't do any good. It can't be destroyed by normal means. We've got to get out of here and see if Ron and the others are back with the things," Hermione said reasonably. They walked out of the room, but found themselves alone in the corridor.
"I suppose we should wait. They know where to find us. Here, let's get behind this statue," Draco suggested. It made him nervous, being out in the open that way.
"Do you think that's a good idea? Yes, you're right,"
Hermione said, shaking her head a bit as though to clear it. "Are you all right?" he asked her with a bit of concern, as they repositioned behind the statue. Her expression was one of befuddlement, and it looked foreign on her face.
"Yes, I'm fine. Just feeling odd, is all."
Hermione looked away into the corridor, her brows knitting together in a look of confusion. "What's wrong?" he asked.
"It's nothing. I just realized the Ancient Runes classroom is just down from here, you know. I miss Professor Babbling. Apparently I miss her very much. I've just realized I've forgotten nearly every rune we studied. Isn't that odd?"
To Draco, it was one of the oddest things he'd ever heard. Hermione Granger forgetting a school lesson would be almost like Hermione Granger forgetting how to breathe. "Are you sure you're all right?" He tilted his head as though trying to solve a puzzle.
"Yes, I think so."
"Hermione, look at me," Draco said urgently. Her roving eyes focused on him, flitted away, and then focused on him again. "Name the ingredients in Polyjuice Potion."
Lacewing flies, and,
powdered unicorn horn, bicorn horn," he corrected.
"Oh, right, silly. That was silly of me. And, flaxseed."
"Fluxweed," he said, growing more concerned.
"Of course, I forgot."
Hermione was starting to look more and more distressed. Tears were gathering in her eyes as she stared up at him.
"I'm so stupid."
His eyes grew round in confusion now. "Hermione, you're the smartest person I know. What's going on?"
"No, I'm not," she answered, tears falling in earnest now. "I'm a fraud, and I think I've always been one."
He looked down between them to where Hermione was clutching the diadem tightly in her grip. As they had talked, she had raised it from waist level to now just under her chin. Slowly, tantalizingly, her hands were bringing it closer and closer to her head, as though intending to put it on. He slapped at it angrily. Her grip tightened slightly as she said, No, I need—" But he did not listen to what she thought she needed. He grabbed the center of the diadem and pulled hard, wrenching it from her grasp. He threw it to the ground at their feet and kicked it, so that it skittered across the stone corridor floor. Their eyes met once more, her copper ones fearful and slightly angry, his silver even more afraid and worried. Both of them breathed deeply, panting as they stared at each other in silence. "What are the ingredients in Polyjuice Potion?" he asked again, slightly out of breath. She recited perfectly from memory. "Lacewing flies, stewed for 21 days, leeches, fluxweed picked at the full moon, knotgrass, powdered bicorn horn, and shredded boomslang skin, plus a bit of the person you want to turn into." She sucked in a quick breath. "Oh my God! What happened?" "That thing. I don't know. Something was wrong with you when you were holding it," Draco said, looking distrustfully across the corridor. "You suddenly didn't know things. I didn't like it."
"I didn't like it either," she said quietly. "I had all of these strange thoughts inside my head. Thoughts telling me I was stupid, ignorant, an imposter, that people actually thought I was quite unintelligent and that I should just shut up. What made it worse is that the thoughts were in my own voice, so it didn't occur to me that they weren't my own thoughts." Draco gripped her hands tightly, staring her in the eyes. "Hermione, you're one of the smartest, most wonderful people I've ever met, and will ever meet. Have no doubt about that."
"Yeah, he's right, Granger. You might be rather annoying and a bit smarmy, and sometimes you snore, but you're plenty smart," Pansy Parkinson said as she and the two Gryffindors approached quietly. Neville had taken off his Fair Isle sweater, and they had stacked several basilisk fangs inside it as a makeshift carryall. Ron looked at the diadem which glittered non-threateningly across the corridor from the statue where Hermione and Draco huddled. "What was it telling you?" he asked Hermione in a low voice. Draco went to the little crown, snatching it up roughly. Hermione did not seem to want to answer. "It told her she was stupid," the blonde wizard finally answered for her, quietly, "which is ridiculous." "Well, I guess that confirms that this is what we thought it was, then, mate," Ron said, nodding. "That locket we took off Umbridge. It put all sorts of thoughts inside my head. I was worthless, would never live up to my brothers, to Harry." Neville and Pansy exchanged wide-eyed looks at this information. What the hell kind of shit-talking jewelry had these people been handling? Hermione scoffed. "Ron, that's silly. You're a good wizard, a good man. You're level-headed, and—" Ron chuckled. "Thanks, Hermione. I appreciate the vote of confidence, but it was because of how the thing called out to me that Harry realized that I should be the one to destroy the locket. And I think it means that you need to be the one to destroy the diadem." Hermione backed a few steps away, slowly. "No, "Yes," Draco agreed. "Right. Weasley, what do we do? Do we need a certain spell, or does she just—" He made a stabbing motion in the air. "That's it, I think. The magic is old, dark, but crude. I'll warn you, though, Hermione," Ron said, turning to her. "It'll fight back. That voice you were hearing inside your head. It'll come back stronger before it dies." Hermione nodded, selecting a sturdy-looking basilisk fang from the pile where Neville had dropped them. Draco placed the little crown on the nearby statue plinth and held it into place for Hermione to destroy. It was over in another minute. The guttural scream and black tarry substance that issued from the diadem as Hermione stabbed it was evidence enough of evil. Harry, Ginny, and Luna tore back around the corner just in time to see the last dregs of Voldemort's soul within the little crown die with an ethereal wail. "That's it. I'm never wearing sapphires again. Rubies and emeralds and diamonds for me from here on out," Pansy whispered to Neville, out of earshot of the rest of them. The Gryffindor nodded his agreement. "Noted, witch." He smiled down at her, pulling her into a hug. They might not understand the full implications of what they just saw, but neither of them had a doubt that it had been a success based on the quiet celebration in front of them. Harry and Ginny hugged fiercely. Draco was kissing away Hermione's mix of happy and fearful tears, and Ron had pulled Luna into an embrace that appeared to surprise both of them. "So now what?" Hermione asked, turning to the others, smiling widely. "Well, Ron destroyed the locket, and Dumbledore the ring. You did the diadem, and I did the diary," Harry summarized, ticking items off on his fingers. "And Tonks was successful," Draco confirmed, having known that she was taking a team to try and find a Horcrux. "Yes, she and your mothers broke into Gringotts and found one. She told me that they destroyed it a couple of hours ago." At the dumbstruck looks on the faces of Draco and Hermione, Ron struggled not to laugh. "I take it you didn't know they were working with Tonks?" "I knew they were in contact with Tonks, but I didn't think that extended to bank robbery," Draco said in shock. Hermione gave him a wide-eyed, disbelieving look, indicating that she had known nothing about her mother's involvement. Everyone hid their smiles, knowing that this would probably be discussed between the two of them later. Harry! The room! Ginny said suddenly. Didn't you say everyone was planning to come through there? It needs to be the room for Dumbledore's army for the passage to work. Shit, you're right. Okay, everyone. There's only 2 left to destroy. I'm to take care of Voldemort, but that leaves the snake. Anyone who can get a clear shot at it, kill it. All right? Everyone, even Neville and Pansy, nodded in understanding. The room was transformed, and the group from the corridor entered the room of requirement just in time to see the passage door on the far side of the room open. The first members of the Order of the Phoenix were arriving.
Thank you for listening to this chapter of The Muggle Death Eater by Great78.